Today I'm fired up, and you should be too, because H.R. 1144, the Frederick Douglass Trafficking Victims Prevention and Protection Reauthorization Act of 2025, just passed committee, and while that might not sound flashy, let me tell you something. This is one of the most important fights for our children, our families, and the soul of this nation. Now, I know most people in D.C. like to talk a big game about protecting human rights and fighting for freedom. But here's the truth. Very few of them have walked the walk like Representative Chris Smith of New Jersey. This man has been fighting human trafficking before most Americans even knew it was happening. He was talking about the buying and selling of human beings, modern-day slavery, when the media was too busy covering red carpets and celebrity gossip. This isn't just about law and policy. This is about a moral line in the sand. I stand against evil, against the criminals, foreign and domestic, who profit from enslaving human lives. And while the Biden administration cuts critical programs at the State Department and USAID that deal with human rights, it's clear that Congress needs to be the adult in the room. Because if we don't protect the most vulnerable among us, our kids, our women, our innocent men, then what are we even doing? If you're a parent, a Christian, a conservative, a patriot, you should be paying attention to this. Let's dive into what happened in that hearing and why H.R. 1144 should matter to every American who still believes in justice and freedom.
Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 1144, the Frederick Douglass Trafficking Victims Prevention and Protection Reauthorization Act of 2025. That's a long title, Chris. The bill was circulated in advance. The clerk shall designate the bill.
H.R. 1144 to reauthorize the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000.
Without objection, the first reading is dispensed with and the bill is considered read and open to amendment at any point. Without objection, the Smith Amendment, in the nature of a substitute, circulated to members in advance, shall be considered as read and will be treated as the original text for purpose of the amendment. I now recognize myself in support of the bill. I want to thank my colleague, Representative Smith from New Jersey, for leading this important bill. I know personally from many discussions that we have how personal this is to him, how close to his heart this is to him. He's been carrying legislation, this and legislation like it for many years. It's constantly something that you work on. You've made it your priority, and I appreciate that and your work to move this across the line. I support this legislation. Trafficking in persons, the buying and selling of human beings, is a horrific form of modern slavery. Between yourself and your co-sponsor, Representative Mfume, leading this effort, I have no doubt that you will make a difference to the world and what we see taking place all too prevalently. Today, millions are trafficked globally for labor or commercial sex obtained through force or fraud or coercion. Transnational criminals profit off of human trafficking to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars, often stealing directly from Americans. Since 2021, a new and very troubling form of trafficking has emerged as well in Southeast Asia, where Chinese criminal gangs are operating industrial-scale compounds that are devoted solely to conducting online crypto scams. These scam centers are powered by the forced labor of hundreds of thousands of trafficked victims, and they target Americans. Sometimes estimates say Americans were scammed out of over $5 billion in 2024 alone. Last year, I chaired an oversight subcommittee hearing on State Department grants programs, and there I heard from the ambassador at large to monitor and combat trafficking in persons, who testified on the work of the TIP office does to expose and prevent trafficking, prosecute traffickers, and protect victims. The bill before us now, the Frederick Douglass Trafficking Victims Prevention and Protection Reauthorization Act of 2025, it reauthorizes the TIP office and its work and makes common sense amendments to strengthen our anti-trafficking statutes. Ever since Congress passed the original Trafficking Victims Protection Act in 2000, the United States has led the world by example on this issue. Thank you, Mr. Smith. And this year marks the 25th anniversary of the passage of the original Trafficking Victims Protection Acts, also written by Representative Smith. I would urge my colleagues to join me in supporting this bipartisan piece of legislation. Do any other members seek recognition? Ranking Member Meeks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to thank you for bringing up the Frederick Douglass Trafficking Victims Prevention and Protection Reauthorization Act of 2025. This bill is essential to our nation's ongoing efforts to combat the global scourge of human trafficking and uphold the core values of freedom, dignity, and human rights around the world. In the face of the administration's cuts at the State Department and USAID to core institutional mechanisms that address issues related to human rights, including trafficking in persons, passing this bill sends a powerful message that the United States Congress remains steadfast in its commitment to protecting vulnerable populations and advancing human rights globally, honoring the enduring legacy of the great Frederick Douglass in the fight for human dignity. We passed this bill last year, and I think it's time that we get it over the finish line, passing it again, getting it through the Senate and on the President's desk to be signed. And with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Representative yields back. The author of this legislation, Representative Smith, is now recognized.
So here's the meat of it. H.R. 1144 is a reauthorization of the 2000 Trafficking Victims Protection Act, the original law that started the federal war against human trafficking. This 2025 version is a refresh, an upgrade, and a recommitment. Was led by Representative Chris Smith, a man who's been called relentless in this fight. He's seen the horrors. He's talked to survivors. He's faced opposition. But he's never backed down. The bill highlights a terrifying new wave of trafficking, crypto scam compounds in Southeast Asia, operated by Chinese gangs, powered by forced labor and aimed directly at scamming Americans. In 2024 alone, these scammers stole $5 billion from Americans. That's not just fraud, it's war. H.R. 1144 re-ups funding for the TIP office, which tracks trafficking worldwide, holds foreign governments accountable, and supports law enforcement and victim services right here at home. This marks the 25th anniversary of the original act, and it's never been more relevant. The three PETA seconds, prevention, protection, and prosecution, have led to over 2,200 major convictions, including the prosecution of predators like Jeffrey Epstein. It expands Megan's Law internationally through the Angel Watch program, ensuring convicted child predators are flagged before they travel abroad for sex tourism trips. And yes, this is real, folks. They're out there renting kids like property. Let that sink in. H.R. 1144 also empowers states to pass their own trafficking laws and adds training for school children, so they know the warning signs and aren't left defenseless. And yes, it provides real support for survivors: housing, employment, education, and trauma recovery. Because rescuing someone is only step one, they need a path to healing. Despite passing in the House in 2022 and 2024, the Senate stalled it twice. Why? Politics, cowardice, or worse. But now, with broad bipartisan support, over 400 votes, H.R. 1144 is one step away from becoming law again. It passed the committee unanimously. No amendments. No opposition. Just action.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, thank you for putting it on the schedule and for your very strong commitment to this issue of trying to protect women and children and men from modern-day slavery. So thank you very, very much, and for your kind words. And to Mr. Meeks, thank you as well. This year, as you pointed out, Mr. Chairman, marks the 25th anniversary of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000, comprehensive landmark legislation that I authored that is the cornerstone of U.S. and global anti-human trafficking efforts. I would remind my colleagues that when I first introduced the TVPA in the late 1990s, the legislation was met with a wall of skepticism and even outright opposition. Assistant Secretary of State Harold Koh testified right here in this room that against most of the provisions of that bill. He said that there was no need for a tip office, just put it into the country reports on human rights practices. He said that the sanctions would be counterproductive, which they are not. I pointed out at that time that one reason why our civil rights laws work is because there is a penalty phase for those who do not follow human rights norms and civil rights norms as prescribed in those statutes. We did prevail, and thankfully it was done in a totally bipartisan way, and we did get the bill over the finish line. At the time, trafficking was widely associated with drugs and with weapons, not human beings. I talked to several U.S. attorneys who, as soon as I brought up the subject, they defaulted right to a discussion about weapons and especially about drugs. Back then, stories of women and children being bought and sold and treated as commodities for sale were met with disbelief, but we persisted, and as I said, in a bipartisan way, we got the bill passed in the House, then in the Senate, and then it was signed into law by President Clinton. It established what is now well known, a framework called the 3 Ps: prevention of trafficking, protection for the victims, and prosecution of the traffickers. I would note parenthetically that more than 2,225 major cases have been, traffickers have been convicted and are today doing serious jail time. Even Epstein was being prosecuted pursuant to the TVPA, but he died obviously before justice could be meted out. But so many, and many of our U.S. attorneys, one of the things we put into the bill, Mr. Chairman, was to try to empower states to pass their own anti-human trafficking laws, which virtually every one of them has. So more prosecutors, more weapons against these people who treat people, again, in such a heinous way. The trafficking law created the TIP office, the TIP report, which continues to hold governments around the world accountable for failing to combat this heinous crime. Today, we are considering, and again, I thank you for putting it on the schedule, H.R. 1144, and we honor Frederick Douglass, a man, a heroic man, a brilliant man, and a Republican who was born into slavery, who became one of America's greatest abolitionists. The bill was developed in very close collaboration with his great-great-great-grandson, Kenneth Morris, and shaped by insights and trauma-informed input from survivors and of trafficking. I'm grateful, very grateful, to Democratic lead co-sponsor Kawisi Mafuni for his leadership and deep commitment to ending modern-day slavery, and to colleagues like Chairman Emeritus Michael McCall, Maria Salazar, Joe Wilson, Ms. Radewagen, Brian Jack, Blake Moore, and many others who have joined in this effort. I'd remind my colleagues, and Mr. Meeks mentioned this a moment ago, that this bill has passed the House in the last 2 Congresses, in 2022 and again in 2024, again with broad bipartisan support, over 400 members voting for it, only to stall in the U.S. Senate. And I urge my colleagues to again try a final effort again to get this across the finish line for the victims and to stop this practice. Specifically, it reauthorizes programs across the State Department, Department of Justice, Homeland Security, and the Department of Health and Human Services. It continues the Angel Watch program to prevent convicted child sex predators from exploiting and raping children overseas. Megan Kanka, the little girl, International Megan's Law is what we call it, was from my hometown of Hamilton. A convicted pedophile lived across the street from her, invited her into his home, brutally raped her, killed her, buried her, and then he went out and handed out brochures saying, "Do you know where Megan is?" That led to Megan's Law in all 50 states, which has had a very profound impact. And then we found out that many of these people who are convicted travel on these child sex tourism trips, and they rent a child for a week or 2 and exploit the living daylights out of them. This now notices countries of destination before they leave and also stamps their passport with information that says the bearer is a child sex predator and has been convicted for that. It also enhances, and this is not part of our jurisdiction, Mr. Chairman, but it is jointly referred to some other committees, which I believe will waive, to provide situation awareness training for elementary and secondary school students so they can be aware and know what the signs are so that they're not trafficked. Again, I want to thank you so much for this, and I yield back.
Representative Yields, any further discussion? Anything over here? No. Representative Kane is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am pleased to support this important legislation, the Frederick Douglass Trafficking Victims Prevention and Protection Reauthorization Act of 2025. Human trafficking is a terrible atrocity, and survivors never fully escape the trauma of their trafficking. In my home state of New Jersey, tireless advocates continue to push for justice for these victims. This bipartisan legislation is an important step in protecting the victims of this horrible crime. It will ensure grant funding is provided to help American communities recognize and respond to trafficking. Additionally, it will allocate funding to help educate and to employ survivors of human trafficking. Through this legislation, we can take an important step in the fight against human trafficking. I thank their colleagues for their partnership, and I urge this committee to support this important legislation. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Any further discussion? There being no further discussion of the bill, the committee will move to consideration of amendments. Does any member wish to offer an amendment? Seeing none, I move that the committee report H.R. 1144 as amendment to the House with a favorable recommendation. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the motion is agreed to. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table, and staff is authorized to make any technical and conforming changes.
Patriots, here's the bottom line. This is the kind of legislation that shows what real leadership looks like. No woke fluff, no political games, just the raw truth and a law that hits predators where it hurts. We're in a world where criminals are getting smarter, going digital, working across borders, and we need to fight fire with fire. H.R. 1144 does that. It arms law enforcement. It exposes corruption. And most importantly, it saves lives. Now, we need to do our part. Call your senators. Demand they support H.R. 1144. Don't let this get buried again in the swamp of D.C. Bureaucracy. Share this video. Talk to your friends. Post it in your Facebook groups. We must keep the pressure on. And to the survivors, the families, and the advocates out there, we see you. We stand with you. And we won't stop fighting for you. This is not just a policy debate. This is a battle between good and evil. And it's a battle we intend to win. God bless you. God bless the United States of America. And as always, stay strong, stay free, and stay loud. Like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We're just getting started.